Level 1. The Dreamer. You're 7 years old, and the aquarium is the loudest place you've ever been silent in. Your class is on a field trip, 30 kids herded through dim blue hallways, and everyone else has already moved on to the touch tank. You haven't moved. You're standing in front of the shark tank with your palm flat against the glass, watching a nurse shark glide past close enough that you can see the texture of its skin. Your teacher calls your name twice before you hear her. You don't want to leave. You've never wanted anything the way you want 5 more minutes in front of this glass. That night, you ask your parents for a book about sharks. Not a toy, not a game, a book. They find one at the library, secondhand, with a bent cover and a great white on the front. You read it cover to cover in 2 nights, sounding out words like cartilage and ampullae that no 7-year-old should know, but you learn them anyway because the book says they matter, and you believe the book completely. One page near the back mentions, almost in passing, an extinct shark that was bigger than anything alive today, a shark that could have swallowed the great white on the cover whole. The book calls it Megalodon. There's a single grainy photograph of a fossil tooth next to a human hand for scale, the tooth nearly as big as the palm holding it. You stare at that photograph longer than you've stared at anything in your life. You don't fully understand what extinct means yet, not really, but you understand enough. This animal was real, and it's gone, and somehow that makes it more important to you than anything that's still alive. You trace the outline of the tooth with your finger on the page until the ink starts to smudge. You ask your mother if you can go find one. She laughs, not unkindly, and says maybe one day. You don't forget that she said maybe. Level 2. The Collector. You're 11 now, and your bedroom has become something between a museum and a shrine. Shark posters cover every wall that isn't already taken up by a bookshelf. The bookshelf itself holds every shark book your local library owns, most of them renewed so many times the librarian recognizes you by name now and sets books aside before you even ask. You've started collecting things that aren't quite the real thing yet. A resin cast of a Megalodon tooth you saved up 11 weeks of allowance to buy from a museum gift shop online. It arrives in a small padded envelope, and you hold it under your desk lamp for 20 minutes before you let yourself put it down. It's not fossilized, it's not real, and you know the difference even at 11, but it's the right shape, the right size, the right weight in your palm, and for now, that's enough to hold on to. You write a report for school on Megalodon extinction theories, going 3 pages over the assigned length because you can't make yourself stop at the minimum. Your teacher writes, clearly passionate about this subject, in red pen at the top, and you keep that report in a folder for years afterward, long after you've forgotten most of what else you wrote in 6th grade. You start watching documentaries obsessively, pausing on any frame that shows a real fossilized tooth, trying to memorize what actual fossilization looks like versus what a cast looks like, enamel that's gone from white to black or brown or gray over millions of years buried in sediment. You learn the vocabulary of people who do this seriously: matrix, root, serration, burrelé. You don't know anyone who does this seriously, you just know the words. Your parents take you to the coast for a week that summer, a regular beach vacation that has nothing to do with fossils on paper. You spend 4 of the 7 days walking the tide line with your head down, scanning the sand and gravel for anything black and triangular. You find broken shells, a rusted bottle cap, a smooth gray stone shaped almost right if you squint. You don't find a tooth. You go home disappointed in a way you can't fully explain to your parents, who thought this was supposed to be a relaxing trip.
Level 3. The Certified Diver. You're 15 and you finally worn your parents down. You've been asking for 2 years, showing them articles, showing them the requirements, proving you're serious in every way a 15-year-old can prove anything. They agreed to let you take an open water diving certification course at the local dive shop, on the condition that you pay for half of it yourself, which you do from 2 summers of mowing lawns and washing cars. The pool sessions feel nothing like the ocean documentaries promised. You're clumsy in the gear, your mask keeps fogging, and clearing your ears the first few times feels like someone's pressing thumbs directly into your skull. The instructor, a weathered man in his 50s who's clearly seen 100 nervous teenagers before you, tells you this is normal. Everyone struggles with buoyancy control at first. You sink when you mean to hover, you rocket to the surface when you mean to descend slowly, you swallow pool water more than once and come up coughing, humiliated in front of the two adults also in your class. Your open water dives happen off a rocky coastline in cold, murky water with visibility under 5 meters. It is nothing like the crystal blue reef footage you've watched 100 times. It's cold, it's dark, kelp brushes against your legs, and your heart rate spikes every single time before your brain catches up and tells you it's just kelp. You see a single small leopard shark on your final certification dive, and even though it's nothing close to what you actually want to see, you surface grinning so hard your mask leaves a mark across your face for an hour. You get your certification card in the mail 3 weeks later. It feels like the first real official piece of evidence that this obsession is becoming something more than a bedroom full of posters. You are now, on paper, someone who is allowed underwater. You start reading everything you can find about fossil hunting divers specifically, people who search submerged riverbeds and offshore deposits for megalodon teeth instead of walking beaches waiting for the tide to hand one over. You learn that the best-known megalodon tooth sites in the world are underwater, buried in ancient riverbeds off certain coastlines, accessible only to people willing to dive for them in low visibility, sometimes at real depth. You add this to the list of things you now want more than almost anything. Level 4, the marine science student. You're 19 and you've declared a major in marine biology, with a concentration that lets you take as many paleontology electives as your advisor will approve. Your professors are, without exception, more excited by living ecosystems than extinct ones, and more than one of them gently suggests that a career built around a single extinct species is a narrow and risky path. You listen politely and change nothing about your plan. The coursework humbles you the way it humbles everyone. You spend entire nights in the lab trying to correctly identify vertebrae fragments under a microscope, certain you've got it right, only to be told by a graduate assistant that you've confused two entirely different orders of fish. You fail your first major exam in comparative anatomy, badly, the kind of failing grade that makes you sit in your car in the parking lot afterward and question everything. You retake the material over winter break on your own, rebuild your understanding from the foundation up, and pass the retake with the highest grade in your cohort. Your second summer, you get accepted into a field research program studying modern shark populations off the coast, tagging and tracking great whites for a professor's ongoing study. It's the first time you've been in open water with an apex predator that could genuinely kill you, and the first dive where a 6-meter great white passes directly beneath the boat is the most alive you've ever felt in your entire life. You watch it move with an economy of effort that no documentary prepared you for. It doesn't look aggressive, it looks like it has never once had to hurry for anything. That night you write in a journal you've kept since you were 11, if this animal, at 6 meters, moves like the ocean itself agreed to get out of its way, you cannot fully imagine what an animal 3 times its size once did to these same waters. You underline the sentence twice. You graduate with your degree and a thesis on tooth morphology comparisons between modern great whites and known megalodon fossil specimens, a paper that gets you noticed by exactly the kind of small, specific academic community you were hoping to be noticed by.
Level 5, the fossil hunter. You're 23, and you've taken a research assistant position that pays barely enough to survive, working under a paleontologist who spent 30 years studying extinct megafauna sharks. Your actual job, most days, involves cataloging specimens in a climate-controlled storage room that smells like dust and preservative chemicals, nowhere near an ocean at all. But on weekends, and on the rare stretch of unpaid leave you can scrape together, you dive. You've saved for proper gear now, a dry suit for colder water, a dive light rated for the depths you actually work at. You join a small, informal network of amateur and semi-professional fossil divers who share GPS coordinates for known productive sites, with a level of secrecy that borders on paranoid, because a good site, once it's public knowledge, gets picked clean within a season. Your first serious dive site is a submerged riverbed nearly 20 meters down, visibility poor, current constant, the kind of dive that punishes carelessness immediately. You spend 3 dives finding nothing but modern shark teeth and unidentifiable bone fragments. On your 4th dive, hovering just above the sediment, fanning silt away from a dark shape with your gloved hand, you find your first real Megalodon tooth. It's small, palm-sized, one edge slightly worn, but it is unmistakably, undeniably real. Black with age, serrated, heavier in your hand than the resin cast you bought at 11 ever was. You surface, and you don't say anything for almost a full minute. Your dive buddy, an older woman who's been doing this for a decade, just nods because she remembers her own first one exactly the same way. You keep that tooth in a small case you carry with you for years afterward. Not because it's the best specimen you'll ever find, but because it's proof that the 11-year-old writing overlong school reports was right to believe this was possible. Level 6, the expedition diver. You're 28, and you've built a reputation now within a small but real community of people who take Megalodon research seriously, both academic and independent. You get invited onto your first funded expedition, a 6-week research trip to a known fossil-rich coastline, working alongside actual paleontologists, geologists, and underwater videographers documenting everything for a museum-backed research initiative. This is different from your solo weekend dives in every way. You're diving twice a day on a strict schedule, decompression stops calculated precisely, every find logged with exact GPS coordinates and depth for the research record instead of quietly pocketed. The expedition lead, a paleontologist with 40 years of field experience, teaches you to read the sediment layers the way a mechanic reads an engine, telling you which layers are likely to hold Miocene-era fossils and which are too young or too disturbed to bother searching. You find over 6 weeks 11 teeth worth cataloging, 3 vertebrae fragments, and 1 partial jaw section that gets the entire boat crew crowding around your dive slate the moment you surface with it. It isn't a complete jaw, nowhere close, but partial jaw sections are rare enough that the expedition lead personally photographs every angle of it before it's even out of the water bag. You also, for the first time, dive somewhere genuinely dangerous. A site with a strong current and a narrow rock overhang where your dive light catches something promising just far enough under the ledge that reaching it means squeezing into a space you can't fully see the exit of. You hesitate. Every piece of training you've ever received tells you not to go under an overhang you can't clearly exit. You back out, empty-handed, and report the site's risk level to the team instead. It's the first time caution costs you a potential find, and it's also the first time you fully understand that the divers who last long enough to matter in this field are the ones who know exactly when to say no.
Level 7, the specialist. You're 33, and you're no longer someone occasionally invited onto expeditions. You're someone expeditions are built around. You've co-authored 2 papers on regional tooth distribution patterns that are cited by other researchers in the field. Museums reach out to you directly when they need someone to verify whether a specimen a member of the public has donated is genuinely significant or just an interesting-looking rock. You spend part of your time now training newer divers the way you were once trained, watching them make the exact mistakes you made, feeling the specific, quiet satisfaction of watching someone's face the moment they surface with their first real tooth in their hand. You recognize the silence that follows. You know exactly what it means because you lived it yourself. You also, for the first time, have to say no to a find. A private collector offers you a significant amount of money for a partial vertebral column you recovered on an expedition, wanting to keep it for a personal collection instead of letting it go to the museum partnership that funded the dive. It's more money than you've made in the last 2 years combined. You say no without much internal debate, and you don't regret it. But you also don't pretend the offer wasn't tempting for exactly as long as it takes to say the word out loud. Your body has started to show what over a decade of serious diving does to a person. Your joints ache differently after long dive days than they used to. You've had 2 minor incidents with rapid ascents that could have been serious and weren't, mostly through luck and partly through the caution you've built over years. You carried both of those near misses with you, the way any serious diver eventually does, as reminders rather than trophies. Level 8, the discoverer. You're 38, and this is the dive that ends up defining your career, though you don't know that in the moment. You're leading your own expedition now, funded partly by a university and partly by a documentary production company that's been following your work for over a year. The site is one you identified yourself. Based on sediment analysis and current patterns, you've spent 3 years quietly researching on your own time, convinced that a particular stretch of submerged coastline was overlooked by earlier expeditions for reasons that had nothing to do with what it actually held. You're right. Over the course of the expedition, your team recovers the most complete set of associated Megalodon vertebrae ever documented from that particular geological period, along with dozens of teeth in remarkable condition, several still showing enamel banding clear enough to help refine growth rate estimates for the species. It's not a complete skeleton. Cartilaginous fish almost never fossilize into complete skeletons, but it's close enough to complete that paleontologists who've spent their entire careers on this species fly out to see it in person before it's even fully cataloged. The find gets your name attached to a paper that ends up cited in textbooks. It gets you invited to speak at a conference where you stand at a podium in front of researchers whose books you read as an 11-year-old sitting on your bedroom floor, tracing the outline of a photograph with your finger. You recognize several of them by face before they say a word. You don't tell most of them that. You think, standing at that podium, about the beach vacation at 15, where you spent 4 days scanning the tide line and found nothing but a rusted bottle cap. You think about how disappointment, at the time, felt like the whole point of the trip had failed. It hadn't failed. It had just been early.
Level 9, the legacy. You're 52 now, and you've stepped back from leading expeditions yourself, though you still dive when your body allows it, and it still allows it more than most people your age would guess. You teach now, formally, running a training program that brings young divers with exactly your old obsession into the field for the first time, watching them fumble with buoyancy control in cold water exactly the way you once did. A museum wing has your name on a small placard beside the jaw reconstruction your expedition's find helped complete. You don't visit it often. You don't need to. You know exactly what's inside that case because you were there. 20 meters down, fanning silt away from something the ocean had been holding on to for millions of years, waiting for someone patient enough to come looking. You still have the first tooth, the small one from your 4th dive at 23, worn edge and all. It sits in your office now instead of a travel case, and it means more to you than any specimen that came after it, including the ones with your name in the credit line of a published paper. A local school reaches out and asks if you'll give a talk to a class of elementary students about your work. You say yes immediately, the way you always do for these requests, because you remember exactly what it felt like to be the kid at the back of a field trip group who wouldn't leave the glass. You bring a resin cast with you this time, not a real tooth, because real ones don't leave secure storage for a school visit. You hold it up in front of 30 kids who are mostly fidgeting, mostly waiting for the session to end so they can go outside. One girl in the second row isn't fidgeting. She's staring at the cast the way you once stared at a grainy photograph in a second-hand library book, completely still, completely somewhere else. You let her hold it after the talk ends, longer than you let the other kids hold it. And you watch her trace the serrated edge with her thumb the exact same way you once did. You don't say anything about what that look means. You don't need to. You know exactly where it leads, because it led you 29 years, 6 countries, and 1 museum placard from that same look on your own face. And there's a real chance, though neither of you knows it yet, that it will lead her somewhere just as far.